Good morning, students. Welcome to the virtual class of Gyaniketan Girls School. This is the continuation of the last video, that is the chapter that we were dealing socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Now, we have seen earlier that when First World War started in 1914, many difficulties were seen that we had dealt in last class in form of its impact. We studied that people were dying, refugees increased, industries disintegrated, people were starving, etc. And the economy of society of the country was completely devastated. And people were bearing everything from early 1914. And slowly and gradually, the frustration and grudges in people increased, and they were ready for revolution in February 1917. Now, how the revolution started, let us see first the background of the revolution. See, now the capital of Petrograd, the city where the king lived, that was Petrograd, the capital city of Petrograd, the city where the king lived. There was a river Neva in Russia, through which city was divided by right and left bank. You can see in the picture here it is given. The river Neva divided the city into two parts. That was, one part was right bank and the other part was left bank. Now, when we see this, that on left bank were fashionable area, means Winter Palace, Duma, official building, where all were there, means it was particularly official area. Whereas right bank had workers quarter and factories were also established there, means all the power were held on the left part of the country, left side of the country. And the condition of city was not so good at that time, as there were food shortages, as it was all supplied to the army. We had seen in the First World War. Weather was also not favorable that cultivation could be done. Cultivators were unable to cultivate any crop. In the meantime, Tsar was also planning, he was also having desire to dissolve Duma, because according to him, Duma was not working how the king wanted the Duma to work. So all these problems arose frustration in people. People were very much frustrated. Earlier, we already had seen that Tsar was not consulting Duma in First World War. Now he was also desiring to dissolve this Duma. So the people inside the Duma was also frustrated with the behavior of Tsar, as his power was uncontrollable. Now, Parliament people were also not happy with the decision of Tsar. Means all the conditions were against the king. People were full of energy, and they were also very much not sure, far, as they were just across the river Neva. Means the king was in the left bank and the workers were in the right bank. So what happened next? What was the thing that was seen as a result of the situation? Now, from 1914 to February 1917, people dealt with king and all the situation that the king imposed on them. But on 22nd Feb, a lockout was seen in the factories. That is, workers locked the factories, and the next day, that was on 23rd Feb, workers of around 50 factories striked, and it occurred on right bank of the city. Thousands of people also joined the strikes, and not only people, only men, but a large number of women also participated in this strike. So, and this day particularly was recognized as International Women's Day. Okay, now you might be thinking that we celebrate Women's Day on 8th of March. So how? See, earlier it was seen that in Russia Julian calendar was followed, and in India we follow Gregorian calendar. So Julian calendar and Gregorian calendar, there is 13 days different between these two calendar. So the women striked over there on 23rd Feb, that was in 1917, and it was according to Gregorian calendar, it is on 8th March, means 23 plus 13, that will be 8th March. Now, so this is just a um, explanation to this, why we celebrate Women's Day on 8th March. Now, in Russia also, Gregorian calendar now is used from 1918, just after the revolution. Now, what happened here after this? Demonstrators, what the demonstrators reached to the center of the capital, that was Nevsky Prospect. This is the Russian word. That was a city in Russia, Nevsky Prospect. They reached the core of this area while protesting. Now, what happened? That government imposed curfew as they reached there, and demonstrated dispersed due to this action taken by government, and they came back on 24th and 25th of February. Now, why? Why they came back? Just for protest, because that protest was not for one day, it continued. So they came back for the protest. Now the government had to look for this, that what the government is doing, what he can do. What government was doing was, the government asked his cavalry was appointed to keep an eye on the demonstrators. Okay, see here you can see a very brief theory of the revolt that happened in Petrograd. That left bank, the city was divided into left bank and right bank. There was food of shortage as in workers quarter. So in 1917 lockout took place, and women also led to this strike, and it came to be known as International Women's Day. And on 23rd Feb, demonstrator workers crossed the factory quarters to center of the capital, Nevsky Prospect. So after this, it was seen that the now everyone gathered for and against the protest. Means the demonstrators were wanting to protest, but the cavalry was the curfew was imposed by the government to stop this protest. So now everyone gathered for and against the protest. Now no one was doing here at this point anything, but so how did this revolution start? Since all the people were now silent, so how the revolution came into force? Now let us see that how it came into force and how the outbreak took place. So all the condition in Russia, means the shortage of food, world war, all this condition, the agriculture was not well, weather was not favorable, all these conditions led to a fertile ground for revolution in Russia. Means the Russian citizen of Russia were ready for revolution. People were also unhappy. After lockout, demonstrators came out for protest, that is on 22nd of Feb. Now from here revolution started, it took its momentum. Now what led the outburst? See, on 25th Feb 1917, Tsar suspended the Duma, as he was desiring to suspend it. So on 25th February, he finally suspended the Duma. Now why? Because he thought the situation in city was not good, and Tsar's desire was also to dissolve Duma, which was put in action on 25th Feb. Now, people and politicians that was in Duma criticized this, and demonstrators returned on the street of left bank of on 26th of Feb. For what? For protesting. For protesting against the king. Now, earlier demonstrators were protesting on their own without any leader, but now politicians who were there in Duma, directly or indirectly, were supporting these demonstrators, as they also wanted that now Tsar should be out of its position. Now whatever people are wanting, they should get that. Why? As I said, now change should be brought, as king was not listening to anyone, neither the citizen of the Russia nor the politicians, conservative people who were there in Duma. Now this time, demonstrators came as more powerful, and they had leadership of the politicians. Okay, so on 27th Feb, police headquarter was also ransacked. Means it was looted by the demonstrators. Now, protest got strengthened for bread, wages, working and democracy. Means people wanted a constitution. Now, at this time, what was government doing? While all these things were happening in Russia, what was government doing at that time? The government called out for cavalry once again. Once again, the cavalry, the soldiers of the government, soldiers of the king was called out and asked, the king asked the cavalry to stop these demonstration on any with any cost. Now, but cavalry at this time refused to fire. Why? Earlier, we already had seen that soldiers were not willing to fight where Tsar was not doing anything for anyone, neither for his subject nor for his politician, for his army. So, here what happened, the confidence of Tsar broke. Now, the cavalry was with the protesters. Here, a mutiny was seen as army was also protesting against the king. Now, the king was seen alone and unarmed, means he had nothing with himself. He alone was there in Russia, who was no one was supporting him. Now, the soldiers and striking workers formed Soviet or council known as Petrograd Soviet. Now, Petrograd Soviet, it is a Russian form. Soviet means, it is in Russian, it means a group, formation of a group. Now, all the protested one formed a group known as Soviet, and since it was formed in Petrograd, it was named as Petrograd Soviet. Now, next day, this group went to Tsar, where military advised him to abdicate, means to give away his throne. Now, king was asked to abdicate as he could not be saved by the citizens who were now having all the power. And finally, the king Tsar Nicholas II abdicated the throne on 2nd of March, and monarchy ended in after February Revolution. Soviet leaders and Duma after that, after the fall of monarchy, Soviet leaders and Duma leaders, what they did, they formed a provisional government. Now, who will rule? By thinking that who will rule, so the formers of the Soviet, the leaders of the Soviet and Duma leader, they formed government that was provisional. Now, universal adult suffrage with constituent assembly was provided in this government. Russia here withdrew from Russia. Earlier only had declared that they will no longer take part in World War. Here it finally declared that Russia is withdrawing from World War. Now, finally, February Revolution brought down the monarchy, and we saw that a new constitution was taken in Russia. Now, since monarchy ended, why one more revolution took place in Russia, that we will deal in next class. For now, thank you and have a nice day. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. You can contact me and ask me. So, thank you and have a nice day.